Ostende nobis Domine misericordiam Tuam.
Et salutare Tunda nobis.
Domine, exaudi orationem meam.
Et clamor meus ad te veniat.
Dominus vobiscum.
Et tu spiritu tuo.
Oremus. Exaudi nos Domine Sancte, Pater omnipotens eterne Deus, et mitere dinieris sanctum angelum tuum de celis, qui custodiat, foveat, protegat, visitet, atque defendat omnes habitantes in hoc habitaculo, per Christum Dominum nostrum.
Amen.
Beata nostra, ut aptisimus ad sacra mysteria celebranda. Confiteo, Deo omnipotens, et vobis gratuus, quia peccami nobis, cogitatione, verbo, opere, missione, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. Io prego Beata Maria Sancta Virgine, omnes angelos et sanctos, et vos rotros, orare pro me ad Domini Deum nostrum. Misereatur nostri omnipotens Deus, et abissis peccatis nostris, reducat nos ad vitam aeterna. sempiterne Deus, da nobis fideis, spei, et caritatis augmentum, et ut mereamur assequi quod promittis, ac nos amare quod precibis, per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum Filium Tuum, qui tecum vivit et regnat in unitate Spiritus Sancti, Deus per omnia saecula saeculorum. Amen.
A reading from the book of Exodus. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the sons of Israel this, you must not molest the stranger or oppress him, for you lived as strangers in the land of Egypt. You must not be harsh with the widow or with the orphan. If you are harsh with them, they will surely cry out to me, and be sure I shall hear their cry. My anger will flare, and I shall kill you with the sword. Your own wives will be widows, your own children orphans. If you lend money to any of my people, to any poor man among you, you must not play the usurer with him. You must not demand interest from him. If you take another's cloak as a pledge, you must give it back to him before sunset. It is all the covering he has. It is the cloak he wraps his body in. What else would he sleep in? If he cries to me, I will listen, for I am full of pity." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Thessalonians. You observed the sort of life we lived when we were with you, which was for your instruction, and you were led to become imitators of us and of the Lord. And it was with joy of the Holy Spirit that you took to the gospel, in spite of the great opposition all round you. This has made you the great example to all believers in Macedonia and Achaia, since it was from you that the word of the Lord started to spread, and not only throughout Macedonia and Achaia, for the news of your faith in God has spread everywhere. We do not need to tell other people about it. Other people tell us how we started the work among you, how you broke with idolatry when you were converted to God and became servants of the real living God, and how you are now waiting for Jesus, his Son, whom he raised from the dead, to come from heaven to save us from the retribution which is coming. The word of the Lord.
Dominus vobiscum.
Et spiritu tuo.
Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Matteum.
Gloria tibi, Domine.
When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they got together, and to disconcert him, one of them put a question. "Master, which is the greatest commandment of the law?" Jesus said, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. The second resembles it. You must love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang the whole law and the prophets also." Verbum Domini.
Laus tibi, Christe.
Some notices first. Holy Communion will be distributed after Mass. Please follow the instructions of the priest and stewards. There is no obligation to receive Holy Communion, so if you have any safety concerns, please feel free to make a spiritual communion or to leave as soon as Mass is finished. Please remember to maintain social distancing outside the church after Mass and try not to congregate too much in the forecourt. This is especially important given the government's rule of 6. If you are able to stay behind for a few minutes after Holy Communion to clean the pews, it would be a great help to us. There are November dead list envelopes available at the back of church. Please take one and return it with your offering and the names of your deceased loved ones to one of the fathers or to the oratory house. You can also do this online on our website.
All Masses on one day each week during November will be offered for the souls on our dead list. And there are also shoeboxes available at the back of church for the Oratory Outreach Christmas Shoebox Appeal. Please take one to fill with Christmas gifts for a child in need, but these will need to be returned by no later than Sunday, the 8th of November. Much like in the liturgy towards the end of Lent, there is a growing tension in the Gospel readings as we come closer towards the end of the year. The Lord is under repeated attack. Last week, the Pharisees and the Herodians had a go. In the passage that followed last Sunday's reading, the Sadducees had a try at tricking him. And after a moment to regroup, today the Pharisees are back. So they ask a question to disconcert him. But the question they ask is one that is worth thinking about. What is the greatest commandment of the law? The law is what made the Jewish people a people. It gave them their identity as the chosen people. It gave them their special relationship with God and their place in history. In a sense, the question is asking, what is the unifying factor? What is the fundamental truth that unites us, that forms and shapes our culture, that makes us who we are? In the context of a nation that is built on its closeness to God, Christ's answer is not surprising. What makes the people of Israel who they are is that they love the Lord their God above all else. And, this being the twist that perhaps the Pharisees were not expecting, for the Christian follower of God, our love for him cannot be real, it cannot find its fullest expression unless we also love our neighbors as ourselves. Neither of Christ's answers could be surprising to the Jews. Both commands, love of God and love of neighbor, are found in the law. But to the rest of the world, the Jewish faith was utterly unfathomable. No pagan god could be loved. Feared, yes, placated, certainly, bribed, even threatened, but not loved. It would be interesting to ask the men and women of today the same question that our Lord was asked. Which is the greatest commandment? Time was when at least a substantial number would have given the same answer as the Lord did. But now there would be probably a whole range of different, often opposing answers. We can see a society and a culture that is becoming increasingly fragmented, and the political realities of this are all too apparent, both here and throughout the world. Successive governments have agonized over what it means to be British, or European, or American. And in the absence of a convincing answer that the majority can agree on to the question, which is the greatest commandment, this has achieved very little. The absence of shared narratives leads to fragmentation and separation. And all the political and social upheaval over the past years shows this so clearly, as does, of course, the coronavirus and our response to it. Which is the greatest commandment? What is the preeminent value? What is the most important issue? Who are we? For us as Catholics, today's Gospel reading does help us to know who we are. We may be as lost as the rest of the country on the question of what makes us a nation, but we should know what it means to be Catholic. Catholics are people who make our first priority in every day of our lives, in every decision we make, the love of God. And because we love God, we choose freely and joyfully to love those around us. Love of God and love of neighbor should drive everything that the Church does, from beautiful churches and works of art, offering the best of what we can to the Lord, to the hospitals and the schools and the charitable works in which the Church has always excelled. Love of God and love of neighbor is what drove the saints to found the great religious orders, to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. Love of God and love of neighbor gave the martyrs strength to give their lives. And love of God and love of neighbor should motivate each of us every day to great and small acts of kindness, of patience, of generosity, and of care. But even this is not quite enough to make it clear who we are. If it was all about giving ourselves in love, we would soon become exhausted. Pope Benedict had a wonderful expression. Before being a command, love is a gift, a reality that God allows us to know and to experience, so that like a seed, it can germinate within us and develop throughout our life. Before being a command, love is a gift. The Lord does challenge, he does insist that we love God and to love our neighbor. But first of all, he shows us what it is like to receive such love. We love our God not because he exists, or because if we don't, then there will be eternal repercussions. We love our God because he loves us first. And so we can modify a little our definition of what it means to be a Catholic. You and I gathered together here are people who are united by the fact that we have received God's love, that we know what it is to receive that love. And having experienced this, we make the love of God the first priority, the greatest commandment in our lives. And having chosen to love God, we choose also to love those around us, even the ones we feel little or no natural affinity with. As Catholics, love is our vocation. And we are challenged to love not just those who are easy to love, the ones like us, but also the ones who are difficult to love, the ones that others reject, the poor and the homeless, the refugees and the displaced, the sick, the lonely, the children that go unknowingly to their deaths before they are even born, perhaps the most unloved people on the planet. Who will love all of them, if not you and me? In his life, Jesus made a point of seeking out the rejected and loving them. He speaks to the ones that others ignore. He touches the ones that others shy away from. Whatever else our faith may drive us to do, it should always drive us to do two things: to allow ourselves to know and experience the love of God, and then to choose to love. We do not love just the ones we find appealing, but we choose to love God. And having chosen to love him, we choose to love our neighbor for his sake. Imagine what the world would be like if, when you ask someone what the Catholic Church is, their instinctive, immediate reply would be, "Those are the people who specialize in love."
Pate fratres ut neam ac vestrum sacrificium acceptabile fiat ante Deum Patrem omnipotentum.
Suscipiat Dominus sacrificium de manibus tuis, ad laudem et gloriam nomini sui, ad utilitatem quoque nostrum, totiusque ecclesiae sue sanctum.
Respice quesumus Domine, muneraque Tuem offerimus maiestati, ut quod nostro servitio geritur, ad Tuam gloriam potius dirigatur, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Dominus vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Sursum corda.
Habemus ad Dominum.
Gratias agamus Domino Deo nostro.
Dignum et justum est.
Vere dignum et justum est, ecum et salutare. Nos tibi semper et ubique gratias agere. Domine Sancte Pater omnipotens aeterne Deus, per Christum Dominum nostrum, qui humanis miseratus erroribus, de Virgine nasci dignatus est, qui crucem passus ar perpetua morte nos liberavit, et ar mortuis resurgens vitam nobis donavit aeternam. Et ideo, cum angelis et archangelis, cum tronis et dominationibus, cumque omnia militia celestis exercitus, hymnum gloriae Tuae canimus, sine fine dicentes. Clementissime Pater, per Iesum Christum Filium Tuum Dominum nostrum, supplices rugamus ac petimus, ut accepta habeas et benedicas, ec dona, ec munera, ec sancta sacrificio elevata. In primis quae tibi offerimus pro Ecclesia Tua Sancta Catholica, quam pacificare, custodire, adunare, et regere dinieris toto orbe terrarum. uno cum famulo tuo Papa nostro Francisco, et antistite nostro Bernardo, et omnibus orthodoxis atque catholici et apostolici fidei cultoribus. Memento Domine famulorum famularumque tuarum. Et omnium circumstantium quorum tibi fides coniata est, et nota devotio, pro quibus tibi offerimus, vel qui tibi offerent hoc sacrificium laudis, pro se suisque omnibus, pro redemptione animarum suarum, pro spe salutis et incolummitatis suae, tibique redunt vota sua eterno Deo, vivo et vero. Communicantes et memoriam venerantes, in primis gloriose semper Virginis Mariae Genetricis Dei Domini nostri, Iesu Christi. Sed et beate Iosef eustim Virginis sponsi, et beatorum apostolorum ac martyrum tuorum, Petri et Pauli, Andrea, Jacobi, Ioannis, Tome, Jacobi, Philippi, Bartolomei, Mattei, Simonis et Taddei, Lini, Cleti, Clementi, Zisti, Cornelii, Cipriani, Laurentii, Chrysogoni, Ioannis et Pauli, Cosme et Damiani, et omnium sanctorum tuorum, quorum meritis precibusque concedas, ut in omnibus protectionis tue muniamur auxilio, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Ancite tua oblationem servitutis nostris, et acumte familiae tue quesumus Domini, obligatus accipias. Diesque nostros in tua pace disponas, etque paterna damnatione nos erici, et in electorum tuorum iubeas gregae numerari, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Quam oblationem tu, Deus, in omnibus quesumus benedictam adscriptam, ratam rationabilem, acceptabilemque facere dinieris, ut nobis corpus et sanguis fiat dilectissimi filii tui Domini nostri, Iesu Christi, qui pridie quam patere tua cepit panem in sanctas ac venerabiles manus suas, et elevatis oculis in caelum a te patrem, Deum Patrem suum omnipotentem, tibi gratias agens benedixit, fregit, deditque discipulis suis dicent. Accipite et manducate ex hoc omnes, hoc est enim corpus meo, quod pro vobis tradetur. Simile modo postquam cenatum est, accipiens et unc preclarum calicem in sanctas ac venerabiles manus suas, item tibi gratias agens benedixit, deditque discipulis suis dicent. Accipite, bibite ex eo omnes, hic est enim calix sanguinis mei, novi et eterni testamenti, qui pro vobis et pro multis effundetur in remissionem peccatorum, hoc facite in meam commemorationem. Mysterium Fidei. Et memores Domine, nos servi tui sed et plebs tua sancta, eustem Christi filii tui Domini nostri, tam beate passionis, nec non ab inferis resurrectionis, sed et in celos gloriose ascensionis, Offerimus preclare majestati Tue, de Tuis donis gratis, ostiam puram, ostiam sanctam, ostiam immaculatam, panem sanctum vitae aeterne, et calicem salutis perpetue. Supraque propitio ex sereno vulturis vicere dineris, et accepta aberi sucuti accepta aberi dignatus est, munera pueri Tui justi aber, et sacrificium patriarchae nostri abre, et quod tibi optalit summus sacerdos tuus Melchizedek, sanctum sacrificium, immaculatum ostia. Supplices te rugamus omnipotens Deus, iube hec perfere per manus sancti angeli Tui in sublime altare Tuum, in conspecto divinae majestatis Tue, ut quod ex ac altaris participatione sacrosanctum Filii Tui corpus et sanguinem sum sedimus, omni benedictione celesti gratia repleamus, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Memento etiam Domine, famulorumque Tuarum, qui nos preceserum consignio Filii, et dormiunt in somno pacis. Memento ipsis Domine et omnibus in Christo quiescentibus locum refrigerii, lucis et pacis et indulgias deprecamo, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Nobis quoque peccatoribus familis Tuis de multitudine miserationum Tuarum sperantibus, partem adequam et societatem donare dinieris, cum suis sanctis apostolis et martyribus, cum Ioannis Stephano, Matteo, Barnaba, Ignazio, Alexandro, Marcellino, Petro, Felicitate Perpetua, Agata, Lucia, Agneta, Cecilia, Anastasia, et omnibus sanctis Tuis intra quorum nos consortium non estimato meritis et veniae quesimus largito admite, per Christum Dominum nostrum, perque mec omnia Domine semper bona creas sanctificas, vivificas, benedicis et prestas nobis. Per ipsum et cum ipso et in ipso, est tibi Deo Patri omnipotenti, in unitate Spiritus Sancti, omnis honor et gloria, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Preceptis salutaribus moniti et divina institutione formati audemus dicere. Pater noster, qui es in celis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, et veniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra. Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, et dimitte nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Libera nos quesumus Domine ab omnibus malis, da propitius pacem in diebus nostris, ut ope misericordiae Tue adiuti, et a peccatus impus semper liberi, et ab omni perturbatione securi, expectantes beatam spem, et adventum Salvatoris nostri, Iesu Christi. Beatum est regnum et potestas Jesu Christe, quid existi apostolis tuis, pacem relinquo vobis, pacem meam do vobis. Ne respicias peccata nostras et fidem ecclesiae Tuae, eamque secundum voluntatem Tuam, pacificare et coadunare dinieris, qui vivis et regnas in saecula saeculorum. Pax Domini sit secer vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Ecce agnus Dei, ecce qui tollit peccatum, beati qui ecce nam vocatus. Domine Deus, Spiritus, et Spiritus, et Spiritus, nobis Domine quesumus, tua sacramenta quod continent, ut quae nunc specie gerimus, rerum veritate capiamus, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen.